Hello and welcome to a brand new episode of Fintech Ki Baat. This is your host Shreyas Jani, and today we are bringing to you a very interesting panel discussion on ONDC, Open Network for Digital Commerce. As a part of it, today we have with us Mr. Bertram D'Souza, Chief Product and Innovation Officer at Protein eGovs, Mr. Anand Kumar Bajaj, founder at PayNearby, and Mr. Sanjeev Kumar, co-founder at Spice Money. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for joining us today. And over to you guys for a quick intro of yourselves. Mr. Bertram, I'd start off with you.
Thanks, Shreyas. So a quick introduction. I've spent more than 2 decades in the technology, payments, and financial services industries. In my current role at Protein, I'm responsible for incubating new products and new business lines as a complement to what we have done over the last 25 years. And we're looking to serve a billion people plus is our vision and goal.
Perfect. Mr. Sanjeev, moving on to you.
Hi, Shreyas. Very, very happy to be here. 22 years of experience across technology and at the BFSI space. Being part of Spice Money for the last 3.5 years now, but on a very exciting journey to solve the full problem of lack of access in rural and semi-urban India. So very, very happy to be part of this discussion.
Pleasure to have you, sir. Mr. Bajaj, over to you for a quick introduction.
Thank you, Shreyas. I founded Nearby Technologies 7 years ago in 2015. And with past banking career and international consulting career, we thought that taking high end of technology to the bottom of the pyramid is one way of redeeming ourselves in this lives. And here we are with a million plus force across the country as a neural network, as one may call, massive deployment of the government DBT subsidies distributed, of the Har Dukaan Digital Pradhan campaign that runs, pumps up the blood both in us and our retail partners, serving the citizens across the country. We'll talk more about it.
Perfect. Looking forward to hearing from all of you. And once again, thank you so much for all your time. Before we dive deep into the ONDC and try to understand what's happening there and how do we see it impacting the Indian economy at that scale, let me just quickly establish the context of each of the players with the stakeholders' relevance to ONDC network as such. Let's start off with Protein first. Protein essentially is the underlying architect and basically a technology service provider for ONDC. Sanjeev Kumar, who's essentially one of the co-founders of Spice Money. Spice Money has recently kind of been onboarded on ONDC as a buyer app and a B2B seller app as well, if I'm not wrong. And PayNearby also is exploring multiple innovative use cases at ONDC, and we are super excited to hear from you as well. So thank you so much once again, and let's start off. Let's kick off this journey to demystifying ONDC, right? So first of all, let's start off with the basic understanding of what ONDC is. ONDC essentially, and please do correct me if I'm wrong, you all are subject matter experts here. Essentially, it's an interoperable platform that aims to democratize e-commerce in the country as we know it, right? And given a country like India, we have seen multiple interoperable platforms earlier that have essentially democratized various things for the citizens of India, be it UPI for payments, be it an aggregator for data, or be it OKN for digital lending. So would want to understand from your perspective on the importance of these kind of platforms for catalyzing large-scale economies like India. So, Mr. Bertram, I think we start off with you. Would want your views on the importance of interoperable platforms or on an economy.
Thanks, Shreyas. What I'd like to start with is by correcting the fact that ONDC is actually not a platform, but it's actually a protocol or a network. And a platform today is where you have more a two-sided marketplace view of buyers and sellers both in one place. And that is where ONDC is actually conceptualized to try and solve the limitations of platforms, Today, if you really look at the internet penetration in India, it's actually gone up significantly in the last 3 years to about 60-65%. Still behind China at 75 and US at around 90-95. But where we still see a huge delta or an opportunity gap is in the place of digital commerce as well as in digital payments. So digital payments again has leapfrogged in the last 5 years, but digital commerce is still at a very low single-digit percentage of 7-8% is what we estimate. And that's where we see a huge opportunity to create something which can create an open network for anyone who feels the need to either become a buyer or a seller to come together in an interoperable manner. So the way ONDC was conceptualized is leveraging on some early success from some pilot projects which use this technology called the Beacon protocol.
Right.
And the Beacon protocol, which was tested first in the mobility domain about 2 to 3 years ago in Kochi, was found to be extremely solution capable for any domain. It was not just mobility centric. So that's where it actually got expanded to a much larger network, which is where ONDC is today. I'd just like to add one more thought to the table, which is in the pandemic, the entire value chain was completely exposed to show you different stages of commerce in the life cycle or the value chain which were broken. And that's another reason why today dependency on platforms is extremely limiting. So I would like to pause and, just take a break for the second question to explain in more detail how an actual transaction works. I'll leave it back to you.
Perfect. Thank you so much. I think that was really insightful. Mr. Sanjeev, would love your views on how do you see the impact of interoperable platforms / networks on the economies like India?
Thanks, Shreyas. I fundamentally believe that the interoperable platforms today has been the bedrock of everything that we've been doing over the last 5-6 years. So every possible innovation and use case that we've been able to solve, I think the ability to democratize payments at such a large scale, being able to, take it to areas which we couldn't even imagine maybe about 6-7 years ago, is only because you have a technology stack available today, a digital public infrastructure available today, that players like us and many more, many players can innovate on basis that to solve for some genuine use cases that have been fundamental to the development of this country. I think this is, according to me, it's a bedrock of everything. We've seen it in payments particularly. I think we're going to see that in commerce, and we're going to see that in healthcare in few years. And I think everything that we'll be solving is going to be on the basis of the public infrastructure. So that is my answer to how important and what represents the meaning and was the essence of these open stack and open public infrastructure.
Completely agree. Thank you so much. I think what really resonates with me is the fact that if you kind of want to build for a country like India, you need someone who is at a central position in a non-biased format, is able to operate. So for the good of the public, as well as maintaining a certain level of stability and profitability for its continued operations. But and we have seen this earlier in different Western economies, right? Wherein a few peers emerge as a monopoly, and then ultimately that kind of leads to, I wouldn't call it destabilization, but stagnation of certain ecosystems in which they kind of get the monopoly, and ultimately that leads to the stagnation of growth. I think to avoid that and to create more interoperable ecosystems and to basically, I would say, foster the smaller players in the country, these kind of interoperable networks are definitely necessary. Having said that, Mr. Anand, I would want to understand from you on how do you see these kind of networks / platforms kind of playing a role in, basically, I would say, growth of a more globalized India, in the sense that ability to interface with different countries when these kind of protocols are been built up somewhere else or been replicated somewhere else, as we have seen in some cases. how do you see growth of a global economy, of India as a global economy? Sir, you are mute.
Yeah, sorry. Shresh, when said actually, this open economy is the Taobao moment of China in India, which actually connects the last mile to the first mile. And in this case, with the global economy opening up, it is so important to get the last mile onto the payment rails, which India has already done with UPI. There are some opportunities to serve the last mile still remaining, which will wire the Bharat to India. Having done that, the content, credit, and commerce will be relayed into the last mile. You will agree that the most of the big tech has focused on the 10% digital savvy value seeking segment, DSG as we call them, the 10% digitized, leaving behind the 90% marginalized and subsidized Bharat, which is where we see that the opportunity to connect economically, to be able to leverage from the angan to hall, as we say, the courtyard to the hall room, the drawing room is available now. And the moment you are able to granularize, sachetize, digitize, and universalize the technology, that is the moment when you will say uplift India, the Uttishta Bharata moment, where you are able to go beyond a casual production of self-help group modules to actual market linkage, where you are not only selling in Delhi, Mumbai, Bombay, Bangalore, or also be able to take it out to the world on a platter along with the UPI. So that's the core belief. Having said that, I only would mention that when we left the bank, our cushy jobs in 2016, the whole resolve was to take the high end of technology to the bottom of the pyramid, API by API, code by code. And glad that what PayNearby today has built is able to serve the common man, both in the urban and the rural across the country. And I think the commerce is the core, which is where the real money would be for every participant, and would like to serve along and talk more.
Got it. Perfect. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for your response. That was really insightful. Mr. Bertram, I'd like to ask this next question to you, since you have been the architect who's been building along with DC, along with Ruti. How do you look at ONDC from a transactional perspective, right? When a retail consumer makes an order that has been fulfilled by the ONDC network at the backend, how does the transaction flow? How do the logics work, assigning essentially the order to the right delivery partner or the most efficient delivery partner, and so on and so forth? It would be very helpful if you could kind of help this visualized.
Absolutely. So I think ONDC in terms of architecture is extremely unbundled, like Anand touched upon. Somewhere, if you compare it to a traditional platform, it's not very different. It's just if you think of the transaction flow in 3 stages. So the way I like to explain ONDC to most people I talk to is there's a demand side and a supply side. A consumer originates or a SME originates the transaction from the demand side using an interface or an app, either both self-service or assisted is possible. When they go into the journey, the first step is where they actually do a search, or what's called the discovery stage. So at the discovery stage, that's when the gateway, which Protean has been responsible for the first wave of this rollout, comes in and broadcasts that particular search request to all the relevant participants on the network from the supply side, and you get a response back from those participants. Now it moves to the second stage of the process, which is the selection and the handshake stage, where the 2 network participants actually talk to each other and set an agreement on the dynamic contract. So ONDC is so much more complex than a typical platform, because in a platform you have the platform owner predefining the rules of the game to both parties. Over here, it dynamically requires both parties to negotiate as the transaction or the order is actually in flight. So that is where the discovery, and then it moves to the order handshake. The next step is where the logistics gets selected. So the consumer or the merchant gets the opportunity now of choosing how they would like the logistics factored into the equation if the supplier has their own logistics or if they would want to arrange for their own logistics for that particular pickup. All of those options again are made available by the open network through an open logistics hub where all the logistics companies have gone and integrated. And finally, you have the payment process, which continues as per our normal payment gateway flows, which is again embedded into the demand side apps. So I think that's how I would explain it to a lay person, that there is a huge opportunity to play today on both sides. On the demand side, obviously the companies or the organizations who would play an active role are those who have the end customer connect, whether it is digital connect or whether it is through an assisted connect. And I think that's where, especially in rural India, last mile partners like PayNearby and Spice Money actually are doing a significant job of engaging rural India. And on the supply side, there's a huge opportunity to bring in both small kiranas, neighborhood stores, as well as some of the largest brands in the country who have already come onto the open network. So just in statistical terms, today you have about 10 or 11 apps which are already live as buyer apps on the ONDC network. We have around 32 seller-side network participants who are also live on the network. And if you look at the pipeline which is there on ONDC's website, and this is all from public data that I'm sharing with you, it's in close to 9,000 plus interested participants at various stages. So it just goes to show that in an unbundled world, every single new element that plugs into the network creates a exponential amplification effect, because it is not just a platform multiplier that you're looking at now. It's almost an exponential multiplier.
Definitely. So from what you said, and from what I was able to understand, I also believe that there is a definite huge opportunity on the seller side, essentially wherein more and more players can go out, aggregate the smaller kirana stores in tier 2, tier 3, tier 4, and then onboard them basically on the ONDC platform. So basically enable them to get discovered on the platform and basically enable the digital commerce for them, right? If I'm getting it correct.
Right. So just to add to that, it enables them to sell what they already have as inventory, and it allows them to also buy if they want to do a purchase. So there is the ability to be,
and that is also there.
That is also.
No, I think these are definitely exciting times, and specifically for smaller MSMEs, kirana stores to get discovered and to get a fair shot away from all the promoted spots in the rankings of the existing platforms that are eaten away by people with deeper pockets. So I think this could probably be an opportunity to get a level playing field for them as well. Having said that, Mr. Sanjeev, I think I would like to pose the next question to you, which is around the fact that how do you see the entire ONDC ecosystem affecting the kind of customers that you deal with at the retail at the retail level, right? So if I'm not wrong, Spice Money also has something called Spice Adhikaris, or basically people who are essentially present in rural areas, enabling distribution of various products to the end consumers. So how do you see this entire ecosystem being catalyzed by a platform like this or a network like this, to use the correct?
So Shreyas, we see three big opportunities, and there is no particular order of any one of them. But obviously there is one opportunity of there is a rural consumer who today is also very savvy. He knows what products are available in the Delhis and Mumbais of the world. Right? He wants an access to those products, but he's not digitally savvy. So he goes to a local entrepreneur like a Spice Money merchant whom we call Spice Money Adhikari. And the Spice Money Adhikari is able to buy something for him which is not accessible in his market. So I'm calling it an assisted e-commerce.
Yeah.
Right. So all of a sudden the rural consumer is exposed to a lot of inventory across the country which he was not getting in his local market. That is one. Second opportunity, which according to us is a very very large opportunity and very adjacent to the business model that we are in. So we have over 1.2 million entrepreneurs and entrepreneurs in rural India, semi-urban and rural India, who use our digital app to provide services in an assisted manner to rural consumers in the community. Right? The opportunity we're seeing is that these rural entrepreneurs, today, where do they go to buy inventory for their business? So for example, if there is a mobile accessory shop, right, where does he buy the accessories? Our study tells us that about 40% of them, they go to nearby outlets to buy. There's about 30% who go to a district headquarters to buy from a distributor, and then maybe 30% to a slightly further location to buy. So there is a spread of where he buys his inventory from. What are we saying? We are saying, you know what? Let me expose you. Let me onboard you as a buyer, right? And on the ONDC platform. And when we onboard a lot of sellers, we onboarded, anybody onboards a lot of sellers onto the ONDC platform because it is an interoperable open loop, right? Then all of a sudden, this person sitting in some remote corner of the country is able to buy, so he gets a larger inventory at a much better pricing, which is delivered at his doorstep. So I'm calling this a B2B buying. So this is something, it increases the business and earnings of that local nanopreneur. So that is the second. Third, the opportunity, what we sell is, there is a lot of local manufacturing that happens in this country, which is beautiful, right, in different parts of the country. Question is, till now, they've been limited to the distribution structure that they had, which is within, let's say, X kilometers of distributing that product. But now, what if you get onboard them as a seller onto your platform? Then all of a sudden, somebody in Orissa, in a remote corner, which is specialized in some artifacts, is today can be exposed to any seller, any buyer sitting in Mumbai's and the Chennai's of the world. Right. So what have we done? We've just exposed his network on a digital platform all of a sudden. I think that's another big opportunity of taking a rural business completely digital across the country on a platform like this. So these are the three big use cases and big journeys that we believe that ONDC can solve. And I'm sure there is a lot of work that many players will have to do to help solve for this. But I think these are very, very large opportunities for the country.
Indeed. I think that is really interesting. And given the fact, I'm also reminded of a certain startup that came up on one of the shows that I wouldn't want to name, but essentially they had a concept wherein they were able to fly in fresh rasgullas from Kolkata or the latest mithais from Rajasthan or khassa kachori from Rajasthan to wherever you want in basically at that day, right? So that actually becomes a much more accessible because of a platform like ONDC, if I were to kind of put it that way. Is it right, Mr. Bhattu? Is it right to put it that way?
It is. So it does allow, for example, if you could onboard them as a seller sitting in, let's say, some part of Rajasthan, and today I could be onboarded on a buyer platform on the ONDC network in Mumbai, and I want to order, let's say, some Rajasthani sweet today. I have the opposite. So that's exactly what it does.
That kind of opens that entire supply chain up to a lot more players and building a niche network of distributors so that player had to do that. Interesting. Having said that, Mr. Anand would want to understand your views on the impact that a network like ONDC will have on the end retail consumers in the Bharat, right? How do you see it impacting their day-to-day lives, and what magnitude of an impact would that be on?
Shreyas, if you see ONDC as a protocol, allows you to connect things nearby or far away onto a common bandwagon, which is accessible to anyone and everyone.
Right.
Now, there are multiple, other than the three use cases that we just discussed about being able to do the Taobao moment from the village to the drawing room in urban, or being able to bring a manufacturer's product into the last mile, etc. There are so many regional players who do not scale beyond a point beyond being regional in a district, in a state, or in a east or west side of the country. They suddenly have the access to the entire country. One. Two, the consumption propels. Actually, for any economy to grow, the consumption should propel, which means the demand should be also made available, or the demand should be fulfilled through the supply side augmentation, which is what all the self-help groups can be brought onto the platform, and beyond the casual 2-product manufacturing, 4-product manufacturing when they have time, they will now have a pure market linkage with the help of ONDC to be able to sell a continuous production that they will, the casual output will become a serious production now that brings more economic growth in the ecosystem. Third, I would say is that the world of digital will be harnessed by those who are up on it at the early stage, which means there would be a lot which will be left behind without missing the point. There will be a lot which will be left behind. But larger, if you see what Ola, Uber did to the cabs standing in a particular lane and a consumer staying in another building, they were connected. Same will be done now for the tier 2 and beyond also. The technology infrastructure will be available to connect local consumption, which also means that my Muzaffarpur ki lychee will not be limited to a certain period in certain area only. It will have a mass consumption certainly in that particular 15 days of time. Or in a similar manner, the Rasgulla, of course, said, I smiled on when Bert and you were talking about Rasgulla, my being one. But the Malda Aam, likewise, from a particular region will be suddenly available in the whole ecosystem. So these are connecting neurons actually and helping the economy to grow. I believe the 25 trillion or 50 trillion is just a number with what ONDC can enable.
Definitely, I think that's a really interesting perspective. And also what that brings a question to my mind is that we might actually see a surge in demand for regional specialty products that earlier were not being able to kind of get that mass consumption or mass distribution. Even though the demand was there, the supply and demand were not able to meet earlier, which now will be possible. So that is
what if ODOP framework, the one district, one product or 2 products now will also further get lined up into the mainframe.
Definitely, and this will actually go a long way to support the local, I would say, micropreneurs who are essentially building or working on the specialty products as well.
Yeah.
Thank you. Having said that, I think, Mr. Pacha, moving on to you, I think definitely super excited to know what are the new use cases being explored on the ONDC protocol. What interesting use cases have you seen? And I also have a follow-up question, but I think I'll reserve it for once you answer.
Sure, Shreyas. So currently you have almost 15-20 categories which are already live on ONDC. And before I go into the categories, the important thing to understand about an open protocol is it has to ensure about standardization at every leg of the protocol. That is the underlying fundamental piece. So if you are enabling groceries, you have to make sure that when a seller onboards a grocery, all sellers are onboarding groceries in a standard fashion. So that is called as taxonomy in the ONDC scheme of things. And for each category that is enabled on the network, the taxonomy has to go through a standardization of the entire catalog. So for the current phase, which is already live, you have almost, like I said, 15-20 like beauty, personal care, groceries, agriculture, food and beverages, pharma and wellness, logistics, of course, home decor, electronics, fashion, furniture, and recently mobility. And with the current phase, which we saw in the last, maybe 6 months or so since ONDC was beta live, we're now also seeing use cases go live on B2B, which was also recently announced. So you have a huge plethora of use cases already on ONDC. You can think of it already as a combination of a Swiggy, Zomato, Uber, Ola, Amazon, Flipkart, all kind of use cases put together in terms of underlying capability. And it's not stopping there. So I think you will see in the next couple of maybe quarters that are coming forward, number of new use cases. They are looking at opening up financial services in a big way as well. So both lending use cases as well as insurance use cases are also likely to come onto an open net.
Interesting. I think two things that kind of piqued my interest there. One is beauty and wellness. So do I see an equivalence of an urban club being formed here, or something like potential of something like an urban club being formed here as well?
Absolutely. I mean, it will enable 100 more such companies if so required. So today, again, the limitation that a platform company would have, without naming them, is they would have to onboard consumers on one side and onboard the service agents on the other side. But over here, even in a rural part of the country, if there was someone who takes the initiative to go and onboard all the local, let's say, electricians and plumbers, you can make that local community discoverable to all people in the area at virtually very little cost. So there can be focused startups who are only focusing on seller onboarding, and they can be focused startups who are focusing on buyer onboarding. They can just do their own respective, areas of play to their strengths, rather than trying to bring both together and keep them engaged and spending a lot of capital.
Understood. So one thing that really, basically, I mean, I've got this question a couple of times earlier also when I was having a conversation with ONDC. Is what would be the differentiator for these kind of startups who are onboarding sellers? Then if there are like 3 startups in, let's say, a tier 2 town onboarding sellers of a certain kind, how would they want to basically differentiate between each other so that they have a certain USP or something like that?
Well, that's a great question. Today, finally, it comes down to the better solution. So it's not that ONDC is going to be the be-all, end-all for the end individual. They will also look at a solution which solves multiple use cases for them. So similar like how people keep talking about the consumer super app, where all consumers would ideally gravitate towards one app which will fulfill all their needs. Currently, of course, there are so many aspirational players in that space. In the supply side, there are a lot of platforms today who are helping businesses with their entire end-to-end turnkey business needs, including their inventory management, including the billing, tax compliance, and so on and so forth. So there is very much a need to create a highly differentiated value to the end seller. So even if it is a small electrician in a rural village who's being onboarded as a seller of a service, he would like the platform to offer him more than just a discovery. And I think that's where the innovation really opens up at the last mile to say, how does technology really come forward and play a role to not just onboard the individual, but to keep him sticky to your solution.
Understood. Well, fair enough. I think that is definitely something we're excited about, the kind of innovations that we'll see in this space, given that now everyone will have a level playing field in the sense of having access to the suppliers and discoverability. So yeah, I think thank you so much for that insight. Having said that, I would kind of move on to the next question, which I want to pose to Mr. Anand first, and then Mr. Sanjeev. You essentially PayNearby and Spice Money have been early adopters of ONDC. You have essentially planned out your businesses so as to basically collaborate with ONDC and create impact in Bharat and India. So what essentially makes you believe that ONDC will be really successful, given the fact that there has been so many e-commerce companies who have tried to work in the Bharat segment and may or may not have been as successful as they wanted to?
So, Shreyas, to agree with Bertram, what he said about a platform connecting to platform is a multiplier. And here we are, 1 million plus retail touchpoints who are already trusted local partners, so to say, community managers, digital pradhans as we call them, the Har Dukaan Digital Pradhan campaign that we run. These digital pradhans are already trustworthy partners in the growth because of the human intelligence that the local Kirana has, that Sharma ji's daughter is ready to go out and study, or Mr. Gupta's son is now looking for a job, or someone wants a two-wheeler, or someone wants a low-cost housing. or yet the local ecosystem's consumption patterns are known because of the human intelligence. That gets fulfilled. Unlike the extent ecom module where everything was a discovery phase, figure it out phase, where someone would see an ad and then try to search. More important that there is a trust built in during this prolonged lockdown when the government of India and others were putting money in the accounts of people, but the banks were closed or they were far, they were not nearby. But the local retailer was putting the money in the hands of citizens. That augmented the credibility of the retailer almost at par with sovereign grade for the citizens in the local area. Now the shelf has no meaning at all. No meaning, absolutely. The consumers are walking into retailer and asking for more, like a sachetized insurance, a micro loan with account aggregator module now available, and the football supplied by Ammijan, as they call Amazon in the rural area, who better delivers than them. And we experimented it. The fact that I'm bringing in is a local credibility of a digital pradhan, being able to connect the need gap with a supply side and being there to assist assurance to the consumer that if your product goes bad, I am here. Of course, there is a commercial arrangement which he gains out of being able to provide this. But the small dukan now has a big godam attached to it. With ONDC, that's the level of success that you will be able to propel, push into the mass India. And I believe that it's a partnership, it's a win some and win more together, no lose, because the e-coms have done the first round of logistics on one hand, and that logistic is now decoupled by the ONDC and available separately also, and also as a package. Now that logistics with the trust of a local retailer, you can imagine how these two platforms interface and they create a multiplier. That's my take on the success that we see and which will happen further.
Perfect. I think that really resonates well. And I think I'm able to connect the dots as well when you go back and look at the points of failure in the journeys of the e-coms that have failed is mainly been happening either due to the lack of trust that people have in paying early and getting the order and sometimes getting wrong items in the order or whatever those mishaps might have happened. That kind of reduces a trust factor. But given the fact that now there is a local point of contact that can give them access to the entirety of the Godam, as you said, right, of whatever goods and services that they want, I think that basically builds a trust factor and could definitely foster more transactions and more business for all the entities. So I think, thank you so much for that insight and food for thought. Mr. Sanjeev would want to understand from you as well on what are your views on, essentially you are also one of the first doctors of ONDC, right? Spice Money has already launched a B2B buyer app, if I'm not wrong. So what has been the reason that you bet, given the fact that earlier e-coms has been a bit lackluster, specifically in the tier 3 areas? What was the convincing or what kind of conviction did you have for betting?
So Shreyas, there are two answers to this. I'll answer the first. I feel that, and with no disrespect to any e-com players, I think the challenge from an e-com player to enter rural India is obviously the last mile connect, right? And the unit economics that enables you to do it, right? So when you work in a very closed loop environment, the unit economics obviously has to be taken care by the entire player, right, from start till the end. Now, and that is what interoperability changes, right? That's exactly what interoperability. When interoperability changes, you build the unit economics, right? To allow, and I think that is why we're betting on a protocol like ONDC, on a network like, right? Because it has unbundled everything, and hence the opportunity for everyone to participate, no matter who you are at any point in the value chain. It increases the probability of an ecosystem, right, joining to serve. So that is the first point. Second point, what we are excited about, like we said, it's very completely as a natural progression to what we are doing, is just the fact that we are with these 1.2 million nanopreneurs. And when you start to understand what more can I do for them to grow, right, for them to serve the community, is a very typical use case of saying, like they said, that they want to, where do they order inventory? They're at the end of it, they're in some kind of business. Okay? So how do they do? They have to order inventory. There is and what do? They go to some district headquarters or a state capital to get that inventory.
Right.
Today, what you do, what I'm linking them to with a wholesaler sitting in Delhi. So I am clearing 3 stops that he had to take, even if he were to access that, and it would have taken him months to do it. So at a click of a button today, he can onboard something he would get from a wholesaler sitting in Delhi, right? At his doorstep. So that obviously increases the products that he can sell. He gets it at a better price. So it increases business. But this is something that we've seen early days. I think the opportunity of, or probably the inflection point of this business to succeed is when there'll be more sellers, when it opens up to more sellers all of a sudden, and just not us onboarding a seller. And when you get exposed to that, and the retailer now also get exposed to seller, every day a new seller getting on. I think that's where the magic will begin for these B2Bs. But we are seeing early signs. We're seeing signs of we onboarded 10 sellers on ourselves. We've onboarded 200 merchants as our pilot, and about 1,000 SKUs are live. And I can tell you one matrix that I measure very categorically is how many people of them are doing repeat buying. And I mean, that is an indicator. And I think today that's 20% of those people that are ordering the second time and the third time. So that's just an indication that, he started to use this platform. He's seeing value here. I think this number can increase more if we have more number of sellers on one side and continue to onboard more and more merchants. So I think that is what we are sitting on, and that's what we're excited about, Shreyas. I want to add one more point, and this is very interesting because we often look at ONDC only from commerce, and I see slightly more than just commerce. I think the opportunity, just not commerce, the opportunity is an intersection of commerce with financial services. Because there is an opportunity, and that's where I think there's a compounding effect here, right? Because for the same merchants there now in rural India, you're giving them a commerce opportunity to increase their inventory and their buying. But you know what? You have an opportunity to embed financial services here also, which was very difficult for it. Right? Or you were probably to resort to, let's say, an unorganized market. And when you bundle both of them, you're just compounding the opportunity that we are. And I think that is something that we should note what ONDC also brings in there.
Definitely. I think financial services is something which is very less talked about in conjunction with ONDC. And when earlier Mr. Bertram mentioned a list of use cases, and he mentioned lending and insurance as 2 of the other use cases that are currently live. I think that actually did pique my curiosity at that point of time, but I kind of missed out on asking the question. So I'll kind of navigate back to you, Mr. Bertram. How do you see the intersection of financial services and ONDC? And also, this leads me to the final question to all of you as well. Which are the use cases that are essentially the most exciting for you on ONDC? So, Mr. Bertram, we'll start with you.
So, Shreyas, just to clarify, I think financial services is not yet live on ONDC. It will go live in the next couple of quarters, is what I mentioned. And like I think Sanjeev rightly called out, it does pose a very interesting opportunity to become a compounding impact on the ability to offer commerce at an unbundled scale. So enable the last mile retailer to not just sell or buy goods, but also to get now wider access to lenders, which otherwise in a platform model, you would have to do bilateral partnerships and tie-ups. So today, you have only a limited number of options as a platform company that you would go and talk to 2 or 3 lenders. I think this will completely democratize the ability to find the best product for the end consumer, be it an individual or a SME. So I think there is a huge opportunity. Of course, it will go through a certain learning curve because this is the first time product like this is being taken to the market. There are many firsts in ONDC, so that is always going to be a challenge. Similar to UPI, and today if we look back, 8-10 years, nobody would have imagined then that UPI would be as ubiquitous as it is today. I'm sure another decade from now, we'll be looking back and smiling at this conversation as well. So I think for me, the opportunity is not just financial services, but the ability to apply this technology or protocol to virtually any sector. So that's really what excites me personally. And being at the intersection, I think the word that Sanjeev also used is that you have so many different use cases that can get layered. I keep talking about this bundled user journey experience, which is of course like a wish list in my mind. If a consumer purchases or does a travel booking and says, I want to travel to a X destination and I want to stay at a X rated hotel, which is close to Y vicinity. That's all the user needs to put in. And let's say that the application that he's working with actually breaks that down into multiple sub-transactions. Does a flight booking, does a hotel booking, does a taxi booking, and everything is kind of fired as internal legs of a commerce transaction and presented to the user as an end ticket or a single confirmation journey. Now that's only possible if you actually unbundle each of these stages of the transaction. True. And the user will get to see the end experience. So we're working towards that kind of a journey, including with bundled insurance integrated into almost every checkout that you do. I think this will be a huge enabler for the financial services sector at large, because HSI's financial services can now get very subtly integrated at the point of checkout, which was not very easy to do for everyone.
True. I think this gives rise to an entire new possibility of product innovation from financial services point of view as well. And we're also super excited to see what Protean along with ONDC builds in this area. Having said that, Mr. Anand, over to you. Would definitely want to hear from you on one specific use case that you are excited about on the ONDC protocol.
See, the whole concept of nearby technology is built on connecting people to the nearby store, and plan to share that in 2020 November, we bagged a patent on digitizing and modernizing retail. Now, again, done that, the whole theme of three-way connection protocol was the idea, and we have been now rewiring to integrate into the ONDC framework, which has been already demonstrated, done, and another set of rewiring with Protean is also being done as a bi-modal protocol. Because when we serve Bharat at scale, we have seen, at least in the banking transactions, we need to work with 6 partner banks. So much of load, the millions of transactions a day that go, would actually crash the servers, and hence 2 partnerships that we have worked on. Having said that, we already have tested with assisted account aggregator model, where people will be able to borrow in assisted mode rather than self-service mode. The whole idea of the digitization is to be able to take bite size into digitized mode through a trusted partner to the masses. So we have already demonstrated the e-commerce integrations, and the thing works very, very nicely. The logistics taken care of, the return management taken care of, the payments, replacements, all of that through a connector retail partner. It's the moment of now saying, bring it on, man. So the whole of it will now be attached to the platform. Lending, micro insurance, micro payments have already been built through UPI and the work that we do with our partner banks, and the micro commerce with the connected retail partners. So I think it's a open architecture, and multiple things will flow through, not just one thing. It's a enabler in each other. Everything that you do with one module propels the next and the next and the next. The commerce propels more credit requires digital payments while they were broken in the last mile, that have enabled people to be able to pay. Payment has propelled commerce. So it's a cycle. Now that commerce happened between a supplier and the retailer, or retailer and a consumer, or a self-help group as a supplier again. All of these modules have been built on our platform, and I think a platform connecting to another platform will be a multiplier now. Eagerly await.
Indeed. I think that is very well put. And these kind of use cases will definitely give rise to a snowball effect of consumption at multiple levels. And if we are interjecting financial services, as Mr. Sanjeev and Mr. Bertram earlier mentioned, I think that will essentially magnify the impact. So super excited to look at the impact that you create at PayNearby in partnership with ONDC, Mr. Anand. Having said that, Mr. Sanjeev, finally, on to you. Which use case do you find the most exciting on the ONDC case?
So Shreyas, for us, the biggest use case that it's very adjacent and the most exciting is the B2B buying and selling.
Mm-hmm.
So for our own network of nanopreneurs, can I onboard more and more nanopreneurs onto this? Can I make them a buyer where they can order more and sell more in their community is the use case that we are most excited. I think that is what we follow as our number one priority first.
Got it. Perfect. I think that's about it for today. Thank you so much, everyone, Mr. Bertram, Mr. Sanjeev, Mr. Anand, for your valuable time. This has really been insightful, and I think I've gotten, if I may take a liberty to say so, a slightly more detailed and nuanced understanding of ONDC as a protocol. That's the right terminology that Mr. Bertram told me to use. So, anyways, thank you so much. It was a pleasure having you here.